Hello and welcome to Happy Horror Time Podcast. My name is Matt Emmert.
And I'm Tim Murdoch. Today's special guest wowed us with his smart and original horror film that premiered on Shudder last year called Who Invited Them? Not only did this movie capture the feeling of trying to look cool in front of house guests you want to impress, but also played on the anxiety we all feel when people overstay their welcome. We can honestly say Who Invited Them is one film you will want to let into your home. Please welcome to the podcast the writer-director of Who Invited Them, Duncan Birmingham. Woo!
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tim. Good intro. Very
Thank
concise.
you. You like that? Yeah. We obviously we're going to spend the majority of this time talking about this film, which we loved, but we always take it back to the beginning. And we read that you grew up in Boston and started your career as an intern at Rolling Stone. Now, I mean, that sounds like a pretty awesome internship to land. So how did that come about and what was that experience like?
I was always a Rolling Stone lover, and I applied. I got very lucky somehow. I think I had also worked at tabloids in high school. I was a office boy at the Weekly World News and the National Enquirer, so I already had a little newsroom experience. Maybe that's why they picked me. And it was super cool. It was my almost famous moment, but I have to admit that at Rolling Stone, I was a big dork, and I don't know if I really took advantage of the internship. I think all the other interns were a little more savvy, pitching articles and stuff. And I was a little like wide-eyed and out of it in New York City after going to school far rural upstate New York. So I it was good, but I also was very naive. I was a little disillusioned by how corporate it was. I don't know what I was expecting.
Wait, how old were you at this time?
I was 22.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I mean, that's tough to, and I guess I'm getting the order wrong because I had thought that you went from Rolling Stone to then working as the Weekly World News in the tabloid, but you did that first?
I did that first. And I kind of worked at Weekly World News a little bit over the years, in and out. Even when I wasn't at their office, I would take pictures of friends in college and old roommates and stuff like that, send them to the Weekly World News. They'd get $40, and then they would appear in the Weekly World News as like a doctor or someone who had been abducted by aliens, and they'd get an alias and all that stuff. So yeah, I had a long relationship with the Weekly World News, and that might have been the other thing. At Rolling Stone, I was a small fish in a big pond. At Weekly World News was just like a 20-person paper, and they let me write some articles. I will tell you the very first day at Rolling Stone, you don't, as an intern, you don't have a desk, you just kind of desk hop. So I was transcribing something for this reporter, and Jan Wenner walked through the office, and I was like, "Ooh, Jan Wenner!" And Jan Wenner looks at me, calls attention, claps his hands for the whole office to look over, and starts yelling at me about how messy my desk is and how the whole office is a mess and a shithole and everybody's got to clean up their space. Meanwhile, this isn't my desk. Luckily, everyone in the office knew I was just an intern, but I was like red-faced.
Oh my God.
He didn't even give me time to respond. He went into his office. So it was an auspicious debut at Rolling Stone that first day.
Oh my God. That's mortifying. Well, because another thing with the Weekly World News, I mean, we saw that you were called a Bigfoot expert, and I'm just wondering, how does one become an Bigfoot expert? Like, did you guys hang out regularly, or like?
There was one summer I was there, and we were offering $1 million reward for anyone to bring in Bigfoot, but he had to be unharmed. And I think I was the only one who had the time on weekends and in the mornings to do radio shows. So they let me be the Bigfoot expert to go on, morning zoos and stuff and talk about Weekly World News's our Bigfoot bounty. But that was the big one. We didn't want people, riding around taking pot shots at Bigfoot with their shotguns. You had to bring them in unharmed. So, I was then deemed the Bigfoot expert.
But tabloids, I mean, working. Can you just? I mean, I don't want to spoil the entire tabloid industry with this, but no. So are you able to? You're just able to make up whatever you want, like no holds barred?
Well, it depends. Weekly World News and National Enquirer are in the same office. So I started at the Enquirer, then I went to Weekly World News. National Enquirer, there's there is a team of lawyers that combs through everything. A lot of that is more the celebrity gossip. Weekly World News, there is a disclaimer in there that a lot of this is fictionalized. I can't
Alternative
remember
facts.
Alternate facts. So the Weekly World News is a weird mix of completely made up stories and then weird associated press, findings and kind of oddball stories that we would put in there too to give it a little verisimilitude. It's very hard to go through the Weekly World News and pick out which are the fake stories and which are the real. I mean, maybe it's not that hard, but that one, we had a lot more license at that one than at the gossip rags like the Enquirer.
That sounds like so much
It all
fun.
comes back to Jamie Lee Curtis. Did you ever see the movie Perfect where John Travolta was writing for Rolling Stone?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so when you went in as an intern, you're like, I'm John Travolta.
You know what? I haven't seen that movie yet. I was thinking like, I'm going to be like Hunter S. Thompson. And then I'm getting like yelled at because there are too many sticky notes on the desk that isn't even mine. But I only saw Perfect a few years ago. But yeah, great movie. Jamie Lee Curtis, always hot, but never been hotter.
Right. And there's so many. Anyway, that's a whole nother podcast talking about Perfect. And of course, we have to ask about working on the show Queer as Folk. What did you do as a writer's assistant? And did you come up with the title of the episode, Home is Where the Ass Is?
I would love to claim that. I did not. I was not allowed near the titles at all. That was a great job. I had just moved to LA. I got very lucky being in the right place at the right time where I heard about that. An interview at Queer as Folk, and they took a real chance on me, hiring me. There was a lot of drama season one. I mean, there was a lot of drama my first week. There was
behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
I can't believe
in the writer's room.
Is there a huge amount of gay people working on the show? Or I mean, I guess I would have
to say yes.
But sorry. Yeah.
Everyone in the writer's room, except for me at that time, was gay, which is part of why part of why it was so great they took a chance on me. And I think, not to get too in the weeds on it, but at least my perception of season one was the showrunners were looking for something, super flashy, provocative, push some buttons. And the writers season one were saying, hey, this is a big opportunity to portray gay life in a way that hasn't been shown yet on TV. Let's not, go crazy with this character sleeping with this guy who's maybe in high school. And so there were, and I understood both points of view, and it was really interesting. And then there was one writer who left the show, and there was like a fist mark through the wall, and there was a lot going on. I mean, all very fun, and everyone was super nice. And I was kind of like, an outsider, but I was just taking notes, trying to do as good a job as I possibly could, and I loved it. Yeah, it was.
That's so cool.
I'm sure learned a lot about gay culture.
Yeah,
I did. I learned a lot about everything. I was very green.
I'm just thinking, like, witnessing that. I can't even imagine witnessing what went on behind the scenes.
Back in 2001, I was shocked by that show.
Well, Tim is from the Midwest, and I often say Tim is a Midwestern lifetime mother.
I don't care.
No, I think that's cool, and
that show pushed a lot of boundaries. Yeah,
it did.
Yeah.
Well, so again, in your lead up to Who Invited Them, we know that was your feature film debut. But before you wrote and directed that movie, we saw that you worked on a bunch of short films, and we were just wondering, were any of them horror related, and which of your various short films that you worked on are you most proud of?
I'd have to say I did a short. The very first short is kind of my favorite short because we shot it in my bedroom, shot it over one night. It was like a super low budget short, practically no budget. And it got into Sundance, and that was so exciting. And at the time I thought, I was like, I've got the magic touch. I can just shoot something in my bedroom, goes to Sundance. That didn't happen with the other shorts or anything else I've worked on. So maybe it was a little bit of beginner's luck. So that's my favorite. The actors in it were great. And that's how I met the producer who produced Who Invited Them. We met at Sundance and talked about doing a movie for years. Only one of the shorts has a horror element, and that was my last short, and it's called Exterminator, about a guy who hires a very an exterminator that pushes his buttons, and she's actually more trouble for him than the rat problem he's trying to solve. So there's a little bit of a horror element in that. And then, but I really liked working on it. I liked going to the horror festivals. At that time, it was COVID, so most of them were over Zoom. But I was like, what a cool world to dip a toe into.
I love that setup, like the exterminator being more of a pest than the actual.
You're exterminator.
Yeah.
Sorry. No. Wait, what was the name of your short that went to Sundance? Your first short?
Oh, that's called Excuse Me. Excuse Me with Angela Trimber and Cy Carter, and they're all on. All those shorts are on Vimeo.
We'll check them out.
And Excuse Me might be on YouTube as well.
Oh, cool. Because we were looking up like your IMDb resume, and a lot of times shorts, they're not obviously as readily available, and didn't know where we could watch them, but that's good to know. And we also had to ask you about that just because of the title. We saw that you produced a short film called Sperm. And I mean, we'd regret it as the people we are if we didn't ask about this one. So please tell us a little about the plot of Sperm.
Sure. I mean, Sperm, I have to admit, I was not that involved, and they shot it at my place. So that was kind of the deal. Can we shoot at your place? Some talented actors that I know, really fun writer, producer who did it. And I knew everybody on the crew. So I think Sperm has to do with a young man who is recruited by his queer landlords to possibly be a donor because they want to two women, they want to have a baby, they need some sperm, and he's a little bit I think he's initially intrigued, but then he realizes he's very low on the list of people they've gone to. He's like the 10th or 12th person they've gone to, and then he's a little insulted.
I would be insulted.
I was waiting for, I guess I'm always so fixated on horror. I was waiting for, and then he murdered them, something.
I don't think there's a horror element. I can't remember the exact ending, and I feel like that's, I'm not sure where that one is. I think that's on Omelette. There's a short site called Omelette.
Nice. Okay.
And we even saw that you've done a little bit of acting. Do you prefer being in front of the camera or behind it?
I prefer being behind it. I mean, if someone was like, "You are amazing," I have that Martin Scorsese fantasy that he's like, "You've got something," and I'm recruited to just play a version of myself, which is really all I can play. Then sure, I'm game. But now I like look at myself on camera. I'm just like, oh my god, there's so many people that are good, and basically, I think if someone drops out, I'll be in a friend short. My dog is also an actor. He's got his own IMDb page. So we're available and we're cheap. And I just like being on set. So if I'm not shooting something and somebody needs a warm body to say some lines, I will do it.
Wait, what is your dog's name?
His name is Snacks. I'll just pick him up since he's right.
Is it Snacks Birmingham? Does he share your last name?
Oh. Can you see him?
Where is he?
Oh, on the couch. Yes. Okay.
Cutie.
What breed of dog is that? Just for our listeners to hear.
He's listeners. He's a mutt. He looks like a small Ewok. He's got some poodle in him. He's diabetic. He's half blind. He's got a lot going on right now.
So you rearrange the furniture?
That gives him character.
Right.
So, another question we ask all of our guests is obviously because we're a horror podcast, growing up, were you a fan of horror films? Or if you weren't, were there any particular ones you saw that made like an impact on you at a young age?
Well, I was a huge movie buff, but I would say I came to horror a little late because I was a big movie buff, but I was also a big scaredy cat. So I was not the kid who was like watching every Friday the 13th. But at a certain point, if you're a movie buff, and you love movies, you're like, all right, well, now's the time. I've seen all the other Kubrick movies. I got to watch The Shining, or I've seen all the William Friedkin movies. Now I got to watch The Exorcist. So I kind of went in with the more high end horror movies at first, and then gradually got very into horror. But those were kind of my entryway movies, more the kind of big high end artsy films that I felt like, well, I got to watch these if I'm going to call myself a cineast at that age. And those are also the ones, a lot of them, that made the big impressions. I mean, I watched a little bit of The Exorcist. My parents came home; they were out to dinner or something. I was terrified, and I admitted to them I watched a little bit of The Exorcist, but that's all, all fake, right? And my dad, who's very religious, was like, "No, it's all real. It's based on a true story. It happened." And that was not what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So I went to bed. I did not sleep that night. So yeah, The Shining, The Exorcist, not a horror movie per se, really, but Deliverance, that might be in my mind. I just resaw it in the theater.
We just watched that recently.
We just watched it recently, and I would definitely call it a horror movie. It is. Yeah. There's true terror
that I remember. It is terrifying. It is just terrifying.
Yeah. A nightmare. So moving on to Who Invited Them, which Matt and I raved about in episode 115.
Yeah. So if you're liking this interview, please listen to episode 115, where you hear our unbiased review before we even knew Duncan. We love this film.
Where did this idea come from? And have you thrown a party where strangers crashed it?
Yeah, the idea for the whole film, like, how did that start?
I mean, I've been the person who has the party and wants. I would say I used to be more the person who was the last to leave, and now I'm more the person who's either the first to leave or the person having the party who's like, all right, we got to wind it up here. It's 12:45.
Ooh, that's late.
So
Tim's like, you mean 9:45?
I like my beauty sleep.
I've been on both sides of the fence. And in terms of where the idea came from, it seems like it was kind of two ideas that I married. One being this, I love home invasion movies. And obviously there are home invasion movies that, like The Strangers, that have a foot in horror. And then there are kind of like the more artsy ones like Funny Games. And then I even like the home invasion movies like there's this Dennis Leary movie, The Ref.
I've seen that.
I love, like, yuppies in trouble with an outside element coming in. So there was this idea of having a party and having some guests that you didn't recognize. And I thought that was a fun idea. If the husband doesn't know him and the wife doesn't know him, and it almost seemed like it was like a way to get into a polite home invasion movie. So that was one idea. And I guess the other idea was really well, I guess that was the seed of the idea. Then I worked on it for a while. I write mostly comedy, as you guys might have seen from the IMDb page. I really wanted to work on something that was a horror movie or had a foot in horror, because I had a lot of fun doing that short, The Exterminator. So I was like, what can the story be behind these uninvited guests that makes them really threatening in a way that it isn't just about the laughs of, like, our main couple trying to get them out of the house, and also how can they realistically stick around the house, like, enough to have a couple drinks? What can be their backstory?
No, that's great. And it's a very original idea, because obviously there's been home invasion thrillers, like, for decades and decades, but it's a very original idea that really made us think about, because there's anybody who has thrown a party or has had guests over. I mean, I throw a big Halloween party every year, and I already know that I'm not going to know everyone there.
Especially in costume.
But especially in costume. But just the idea of, you always assume, even me, like, if someone at the party I don't know, I assume, well, they have to know someone that I knew. Like, you don't immediately think it's danger. So I think it's so creative that it's like people that are weaving their way into your home that way, because no one's going to assume that people are going to use that tactic to get in. It just seems too in front of everybody, right? Just out in yeah.
But use the bathroom. That's a really good one.
Yeah, or if someone's crashing a party, you assume they're like super fun people. Like, oh, look at these party crashers. These guys are wild and uninhibited. You don't assume they are dangerous. I know it's almost like parties are like this X Factor evening where you open your house up, but somehow you don't think anything could go wrong. And I also think post-COVID, I want to say the whole thing was like a metaphor for COVID, but I only came up with this later. There is something that seems more kind of dangerous and risky about having a party in this I shouldn't say post-COVID, wherever we are in COVID world, where that kind of socializing feels like it comes with some baggage. But yeah, it's funny. Most of the reaction to the movie's been very good, but obviously, I don't know if you've heard, but on Twitter sometimes there are certain haters for things, and there's a certain type of person on Twitter who's talked about the movie that I feel like it's a little bit of a self-own, where they say something like, "Yeah, this movie, the people have a party, and then they don't know some of the people at the party. Like, when has that ever happened?" And it's like, have you ever been to a party? Clearly, you've never thrown a party. I mean, if you're having a good sized party, if there's at least one or two people you don't know there, it's not a party otherwise.
That's complete bullshit.
I don't engage with the Twitter trolls.
Well, Twitter, I mean, people want to find reasons to hate things. It's unfortunate. But I mean, you're right. Anybody who's thrown a party or a sizable party knows that there's always going to be people that you don't immediately recognize or that you assume are friends of friends, or that can easily say, oh, we know that person over there. And as the host, you have so many things on your mind that you're like, oh, sure. You're not going to really think about it.
Yeah. And if they're sitting next to someone, they obviously came with that person. I don't know.
You never know. But, I also wanted to ask if you can take us through how the film made its way to becoming a Shudder exclusive. And also, as the writer, did you always know you wanted to direct it yourself, or was there ever a time when you just wanted to sell the script?
I knew I wanted to direct it myself. In the going back the aughts, I worked more after Queer as Folk, worked more as a screenwriter, sold some scripts, but nothing ever, even when I sold something, nothing got made. I was kind of like, didn't have any control, got into TV, loved TV. The writer, when you're in TV, is kind of more the producer, a little more in charge, but never lost that desire to make movies and make shorts. So I was working on Who Invited Them as a script. The idea was, what can I write that isn't going to have an enormous budget? It'll be bigger than one location, but not too much bigger. Have a budget that's just small enough that I'll be able to find someone who will trust me to direct this and pony up the dough. So that was the idea for me to direct it, and we shopped it around, and Shudder was just really enthusiastic and seemed to really like it and want to work together, but be hands off. They didn't really have any thoughts. Nothing's occurring to me in terms of like the directions the script should go. I think maybe they like the idea of doing something that had a foot in comedy. Not that they don't have a bunch of things that are comedic on the site, but they got involved, and once they were involved, we were kind of all systems go.
No, that's awesome, because Shudder, I mean, as horror enthusiasts, like, that is the go-to streaming service for horror. It's still, even before they had original content, there's a million streaming services where you can watch horror on, but they always had the best horror. And now with their originals and exclusives, they have new stuff almost every week. So it's just like it's always giving more content, which is amazing for people who love horror. I have to ask about this because this is, I think, what first got us chatting with you on social media, because we had a clip from our episode about this topic. And now we get to actually talk with you about it. Well, so what made you decide not to include a question mark at the end of the title? Who invited them? And I'm wondering if any parties involved ever said, hey, do you want to put a question mark at that? Because we're unbiased, no thoughts on that, but just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
All right. I never thought a question mark. To me, a question mark always feels like maybe it's a little more of a comedy. You don't have periods at the end of titles, so I feel like you can get away with it. And so I left the question mark out. Maybe a couple people mentioned something, and then our brilliant editor at one point mentioned and found this article, and he was like, there's almost a little bit of a Hollywood, some Hollywood lore, a little bit of a curse around the question mark in terms of box office. And sure, there are exceptions. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, I think, has one. What's Up, Doc? But I think the most famous case is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which originally had the question mark. Then before the movie was rolled out, they took the question mark off all the PR materials, and it does not have one because a question mark, I don't know, just feels a little watery. So there's just a lot of bad question mark movies. Like,
is there one called Who's the Man?
Wait, Who's the Man? And what did you say? Which one?
Who's Your Caddy is one.
I've heard that.
Yes, you think you posted
there's one
that.
with John Candy, I think. Who's Harry Crumb that didn't do that well.
I saw that.
Does what about Bob have a question mark?
I feel like it does.
That's so funny.
I feel like it does too. I feel like it does too. So every, exceptions to every rule.
No, I love it. I think it's funny. We were talking about how when I read it without a question mark, I read it like a statement, like it's more definitive, like who invited them versus who invited them. I know this is the dumbest topic.
I'm listening to you.
No, I like the definitive statement version. Who invited them?
Who
It's
invited
not like,
them?
Yeah.
No, it's not like I don't know who invited them. Anyway, I just had to ask you about because it's too funny because I know we connected with you on Twitter, all of our favorite social media platforms over that. But another thing, obviously, want to compliment you on the very smart writing because it truly is it's just so well written. And one of the things other than the writing that makes this movie so effective is the casting. I think the four main stars, Ryan Hansen, Melissa Tang, Timothy Granaderos, and Perry Matfeld, they're not only all brilliant in this film, but they're also, I would say those are pretty big names to get in your very first film. And I was just wondering, what was the casting process like? And did you have any other stars in mind for any of the roles when you first wrote the script?
We were super lucky. Like you said, I was super blessed by the movie gods with those four. The four strongest legs to support this movie table. When I wrote the script, I had actors in mind that maybe I already had relationships with. I talked to some. We had a Zoom read. The dates for the movie kept pushing. So these actors were all on my radar, but they weren't people that I thought I could get, and I didn't write the script with them in mind. So it was a real blessing to get them, and it was a combination of reaching out with my producer, bringing in a casting director, and just kind of crossing our fingers when we ended up going to them. And this came together very quickly. This was a very, we talk about Shudder being involved, but this was a super indie movie. This was a 12-day shoot, no fancy trailer. This was like bare bones. So these actors came in, we had a Zoom read. I met them at our little costume fitting, which was basically me and the producer throwing clothes at them. And then it was like right into 12 days of night shoots.
It's so slick.
Yeah.
And these are four, I think, very difficult, tricky roles. And all four of them just came in and totally nailed it. And I think give very distinct, very different types of performances, which is maybe one of my favorite things about the movie, that the performances all feel very different, but also all of a piece. So I feel like they all work with the tone. So I really got super lucky.
And Adam and Margot are so relatable. Every situation that they're in, as a viewer, you're like, oh, I can relate to that. Oh, I would do that. Like, there was never a point where it felt like a movie. Yes, it's a movie, but like they did things that
people throwing a party would do. It felt very believable. Like even just them wondering, like everybody's had that feeling of, I don't want to look lame, so I'll let these people stay, or I'll stay longer at this party when you really don't want to. And it's all because you're trying to impress other people, which is so funny.
Which character would you relate to most?
Yeah, hopefully not Sasha or Tom.
I relate to Tom because I like that outfit.
Obviously, all four of me, but there's no doubt, and I'll just say this as a story. Like we showed the movie at the Overlook Film Festival in New Orleans, and someone raised their hand, and their question had to do with how douchey Adam was, and I was like, well, yes, but also certainly Adam is the most closest to my personality. Bits of his dialogue are things I say all the time. I wake up every day. I want to be more of a Tom, minus his more sociopathic behavior. But yes, I'm more squarely in the Adam camp. So I feel like Adam and Margot are very relatable, and I wanted to give them real problems, but problems that hopefully don't feel that different than a couple that's been married, 11, 12 years might have. I talked about this with Ryan and Melissa, that at the end of the day, Adam and Margot are going to stay together. They do have a good relationship. Tom is spot on when he says that. They just have, big problems to overcome.
I'm a Sasha. I like to get people to do cocaine in front of me.
Oh, I know. I know it could be blamed on cocaine.
You don't have to twist my arm.
Have you ever been to a party where they did have a hashtag like the one you used, Adam and Margot's crib?
I know I've been to like engagement parties and weddings where they have the hashtag, and then it was like a theme party. I've been to a Halloween party where it was like, this is the hashtag. So yes,
I love
It's
it.
so douchey, but at the same time, I actually I've been told to have the hashtag, like, especially at the Halloween parties I have, like, because it has a name. And I'm like, and I get that it's a good place so you can spot all the pictures. But I think it's one thing if it's a big event where you're going to want to see pictures like Halloween or a birthday or an engagement. But when it's just their housewarming party.
I didn't think Adam came across as douchey. I thought he came across as grounded and real. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think he was douchey at all.
And I mean, in all, I was joking about Sasha. Obviously, I felt more like the Margot character of like cringing when he was saying those things and just trying to get people
I liked him
to be, But I mean, there's believable aspects of
all Adam's little douchiness. Comes from a place of vulnerability. Hopefully, you know that.
That's what I. Yeah.
And so I need to know. Let's back up here. I want to know what the name of the Halloween party is.
It's called Halloween Havoc, and we just had the 19th year, so like it was Halloween Havoc X1X because do Roman numerals. But and I know now I sound like the douche. No, but I didn't like get up at the beginning and say, "Hey everyone, hashtag Halloween Havoc." But I did title it that, so I guess that's a little douchey, you know.
So you got to find the pictures somehow.
Well, you're right. You're right.
I'm just thinking about it now and cringing. I've got a book club. I have a hashtag for that. I've got, I'll hashtag the hell out of whatever. Yeah.
I love it. So, one thing that's really, one thing that's fun about this film, watching Sasha and Tom totally manipulate Adam and Margot and continue to kind of goad them into arguing with each other. It's so much fun. And I'm just wondering, as a writer, is it tough as you're writing a script to continue kind of raising the stakes in a film like this as you're also trying to keep the audience guessing? Because another thing that I loved about this is that I knew obviously there was something off about Tom and Sasha, but I didn't quite guess the entire plot until the end when it's kind of revealed and stuff. So I'm just wondering, as a writer, how do you continue raising the stakes and keeping people guessing, that kind of thing?
It was a little tricky. I would say the raising the stakes was the less tricky of the two, in terms of, once I kind of got going on the script, Tom and Sasha's characters felt like they had these interesting voices, and I kind of, at least I feel like I cracked the code of why Adam and Margot would keep them around so long, is because they're impressed by them, and Adam it's not only do they like them, but also there's a job opportunity there. There's social opportunities there. There's kind of like this ladder climbing thing going on, but at the same time they're super, super charming, which was another reason I got so lucky with these actors, because they are super, super charming. The harder part, yes, was certainly this idea of like, since it's not a comedy, and there is horror, but a lot of the horror comes kind of later in the movie. So how do you keep the tension high? I wanted to reveal. I think in most home invasion movies in that genre, which we are playing with, more than the couple that is being invaded. Like you know that these people coming into the house are bad news. So I wanted us to be, the audience, to be ahead of Adam and Margot, but not too ahead. And then but I also didn't want to drop. So I didn't want to save all the reveals to the end and have it kind of feel like a cheat, like, you can kind of come up with anything at the end I wanted to feel organic. So I would say the downside of that is some people might, the ideal audience member in my mind would be a little ahead of Adam and Margot, would kind of have some theories about who Tom and Sasha are. Oh, are they this? But then they might throw those theories away, because we're kind of trying to convince you that maybe what you were thinking isn't what you were thinking, and then by the end, what you were thinking might be a little closer to the truth than not. So tried to give it out in bits and pieces.
How much changed from script to screen? Is there any characters you had to cut out, or
even major plot points that changed from the script to when you filmed?
Since it was such a low budget movie, and as you know from the running time, it's like a tight 83 minutes.
My favorite.
Didn't really have that much of an option to leave things on the cutting room floor. The script was a tight 83 pages. I would say the only thing that was really cut two things. There was a moment with the characters Teeny and Frank, who were their kind of more homey, down to earth neighbors from down the hill that they've left behind, and as they're kind of deciding who's going to drive back up into the hill and get the stuffed animal, which is we know, or we are suspecting is like someone who's going to be walking into danger, they were going to have like a coin flip. And it was all about like the fate of like, is it going to be the douchey husband who knows about guns and you might want to see him get killed, or is it going to be his sweet as pie wife who's the last person you want in an emergency? So I like that coin flip. It didn't quite come out. As a director, I should have practiced this coin flip more. It just didn't quite play the way I covered it. So we cut that out, and that was basically it. I'll say the one other thing, we did a little tweak where there's a flashback pop towards the end of the movie where Tom and Sasha are talking about the plan they put into effect, and we see little bits without seeing their faces of them creeping around the house. That little bit was in the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
We decided, you know what? Let's make it a little more fun, so we don't completely know Tom and Sasha are creeps for the first half hour of the movie. Let's not see them around the house.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, it's interesting. I am obviously, since you are the writer of this film, there are three little things that we wanted to ask you about and clear up regarding the plot. And the first is Adam and Margot's son Dylan and those troubling dreams he has about his parents being killed. In fact, the film, opens with one of his dreams. I was just wanted to know, what was your thinking behind this plot point? Like, was it just meant to give the film an ominous feel, or was there more meaning behind those dreams?
I certainly liked opening the film with an ominous feel. I also feel like the ending feels a little dreamlike too. So I like this idea of like the bookends, both being dreamlike. And it also felt like they moved to a new house, a new neighborhood, a new house, and the parents aren't quite getting along. It felt fairly organic and makes sense to me that Dylan, the son, might be having these bad, bizarre dreams. And I felt like using that as something that almost felt like it made sense that he'd be having them. But since children are so, intuitive, that if we had the dream in the movie, it might kind of raise your eyebrows a little bit. Like, oh, is this something? Are we moving in this direction in the movie? So it hopefully works on that level. Like, oh, this is a little creepy. Is this the direction we're moving in the movie? Is Dylan picking up on something going on with Tom and Sasha? Or is it just the more organic explanation of Dylan's in a new house and he's having nightmares, and that's kind of what new kids do when they are in a new neighborhood? And we kind of did that in a lot of the movie. I think having two answers to different choices. One organic explanation, and then something that might be a little more fantastical. So hopefully that played.
No, that makes sense. And the second one we wanted to ask about was, and you had mentioned, is the character of Teeny, and she's the friend, and her subplot and getting lost on the way back to Adam and Margot's house, and the whole thing with not being able to shoot that coyote that her husband hits. And when she finally makes it back to their house toward the end, I think we assumed she'd be the one to like save the day or something, come in and like foil the plot, and she actually doesn't at all. And I was just wondering, in your mind, was everything involving Teeny, was it kind of meant to give viewers more of like a break from the four main characters, or was it just a show that she had the personality of like too hesitant to be someone who could save the day? Just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love those B plots in movies like this. Everything from something like Get Out to Misery to The Shining, where there's this character who might have some information and they're running to beat the clock to save the protagonist or give the protagonist the information before they get in too deep. So the idea was, I thought it'd be fun to have the person who you would least want to walk into a dangerous situation walk into this dangerous situation. So that was the idea with Teeny. But then I also wanted to give her, for me, like the ultimate subversion of that B plot is The Shining, where you're watching Scatman Crothers, like the whole movie, like, oh God, get him up there. Is he going to get there in time? And the moment he gets there, he's just killed.
Yes, we talk about that all the time. It's like he travels so long to get there, and right when he walks
axe in the stomach.
Axe in the stomach. That makes a lot of sense.
So for Teeny, I wanted to give her a little bit of a plot, so it wasn't just that she goes up there and we subvert what the usual expectation is. So the idea of her kind of not being able to use a firearm with the suffering animal hopefully gives you this feeling of like, oh my God, this person should just turn around right now.
Danger.
They're totally useless. And so on one hand, she is completely ineffective and just makes things worse. But on the other hand, you could argue that she has a little bit of a win by being able to do something aggressive when she does get up there into the hills.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
She
You mean
uses the
shooting
gun.
shooting at
In
him?
terms of firing the gun, yes.
She only nips his face, right?
Yeah.
Did
Right.
she get his arm? Okay, no. Okay.
Yeah. No, I
She
mean,
just-
it's just
she
so
just-
sad because it makes a lot of sense though now with the Shining
I
reference.
love
I
it.
totally get that more of like this person you're following and you want to get there to like help and then they just absolutely don't and you're like crushed but at least she survives. And again, our podcast, that people who listen, we know we're spoiler. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we spoiled
Yeah.
the movie when we reviewed
Hopefully
it.
everyone's
So,
seen this before they push
yes,
play.
and we will definitely.
No, I mean, my biggest worry with that, and I think it is justified because some people were confused, is that I was like, oh, does it make sense for someone that doesn't live in LA, this idea of how long it can take you
Yes.
and how easy it is to because I've done that. I've lost phone reception in the hills and been lost up there trying to find a party. It's so easy for it to happen.
Happens to me constantly.
Yeah.
And thirdly, did Tom and Sasha kill the hamster, or did the hamster just fall into that drink?
Another one of those things that could work on two levels. I think they definitely put the hamster in the drink. I think it's a little up in the air whether they took it out of the cage, killed it, and put it in the drink, or if the hamster, because it's always escaping from the cage, was running down the hallway and Tom, picked it up with a handkerchief and put it in the drink. But it was definitely placed in the drink by them.
Horrible
Open
people.
to interpretation.
Horrible people. All the killing of the people I can understand, but
not that
when you touch
hamster.
a hamster, you've gone too far.
It's gone too far. I mean, I guess I could have said another option would have been the hamster escaped from the cage, had a heart attack, and Tom picked it up. If that's going to make the movie more palatable for someone, let's go with that option. But
I'm sure people will be okay with that. Another thing, Tom and Sasha, I love this in the film because they love continuing to bring up the idea of like swinging and threesomes with Adam and Margot. And I was just wondering, and this is not just because I'm perverted, but were you ever considering including some type of like awkward sex scene between the four of them in the film, or was all the talk just a way of totally just like testing Adam and Margot's
And making
faithfulness?
them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was Tom and Sasha kind of giving them the old marriage strength test and pushing their buttons in that way they do through the film, where they're seeing like how much can we fuck with this couple, and is this a good couple? If I could have pushed it, had an idea of how to push it even further, that would have made sense. Sure, I would have loved to come up with an idea that had them all in bed together, but it didn't seem I couldn't come up with something that legitimately would have
Once
made
the
sense.
clothes are off, it's all downhill.
Well, it's unfortunate because we're big fans of Timothy Granadero.
The other one
Yeah.
too.
Ryan Hansen.
Yeah.
Hansen.
Did you ever see him in Burning Love? Off the topic of everything.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just wondering.
Ryan Hansen was also in the Friday the 13th remake.
That's true. And he
Yeah.
was in Bad Santa too.
And he was in Veronica
Okay.
Mars. Yeah.
Okay, and not only Party Down original, but the Party Down reboot that's coming up.
Oh,
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we were just. I think no, it definitely didn't need the sex scene, but it's like because they were so focused on it. I was like, I wonder how awkward it would have gone if they actually tried to initiate.
I think it was all talk.
Yeah.
I think if Adam and Margot had called their I guess in a way you could call it a bluff, called their bluff on the sex stuff, they would be dead before
Yeah, I was just gonna say that would be a cantaloupe, not a rutabaga. Yes.
And this movie, I'm assuming, was filmed during the pandemic. What was the hardest obstacle?
Just the anxiety of, is someone going to get COVID, and then what's going to happen because we don't have the money to hold off on shoots or have other shoot days. So it was really tense. Also, just the fact that everyone's got their masks on. It's a little hard to obviously the actors don't. And when I'm talking to the actors, I get to take my mask off and be a little far away. But still, it's hard with a crew that you've just met, and you want everyone's working really hard and is exhausted, but you want everyone to feel a little camaraderie, and you're still passing them, and it's hard to kind of get everyone like excited about the movie when you're masked up.
Hey, everyone, put on a mask. We're making a movie.
No, I mean, I can't even imagine.
So that definitely was a hurdle. We had a great COVID safety person who checked us in every day, but it was definitely another hurdle, obviously another expense to the movie. I mean, when we had our premiere here in LA, I joked that I was like, wow, I'm seeing the crew, I'm seeing mustaches, I'm seeing chins, I'm seeing dimples. I don't even recognize half of the people here.
Yeah.
Because
some people are cuter, some people are not.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are probably even better looking than you're imagining, but you're just not imagining that nose. So it just kind of throws you off. You're like, I thought you had a
story
totally
of
different
my life.
No, your nose is cute.
I've got thanks. No, you mentioned how you thought Shudder may have shown some more interest in this because it had a nice kind of balance of comedic and horror elements. We're wondering, was the movie's pretty light on gore until the very end when the neighbors are killed. Did Shudder or anyone involved ever step in and ask for more gore or more kills in your film?
They didn't ask. I think they did encourage us to kind of lean into the kills that we had, and just make sure I didn't do any rewrites to make there less kills. I know they did like this idea of starting with the nightmare, with Dylan's nightmares. So yeah, kept that in, and also starting with the nightmare it just gave us a chance to kind of do something a little different that we don't get to do in the movie in terms of the way it's lit, and we don't get to spend a lot of time with other characters besides the initial 6. So yeah, they didn't ask for any more dead bodies, which was nice because it's hard to come up with dead bodies.
And also it works, I think, as it is. I mean, again, you don't have to have kills and gores to be scary. And one thing that Tim and I noticed, and I think we talked about this in our review of the film, is that you can, because of the writing and the performances, the anxiety level as a viewer, it just keeps raising and raising because you're like, are they ever going to leave? Are they going to find a way out? So it's and I think that is what makes a really effective suspense thriller or horror movie, that you can get the viewer to feel the anxiety that, the protagonists are feeling or something. And you don't need to just be chopping people up to get that anxiety.
I like both. Just kidding.
I like both too. I do love movies that are super tense. I just rewatched After Hours 2 nights ago, one of my favorites. Things like that, Uncut Gems, movies I've already cited that are more in the vein with the information and funny games. But it doesn't matter if they're horror, dark comedy, or what. This kind of subgenre of just anxiety-inducing movies, I'm all in.
Uncut Gems is a hard movie to sit through.
You may also want to watch, especially if you have a fear of heights, a movie called Fall. It was just an independent. Well, it was it's just about 2 girls climbing a tower, but the way they film it and everything, you feel like you are up there on that tower with them, and you never can relax.
My palms were sweaty for 20 minutes.
It's just a very underrated movie that we saw and reviewed in one of our episodes, and it played very limited run in theaters.
Maybe
I don't
a week.
think it did that well, but it just, talk about a movie that makes you uncomfortable the entire way. So if you like feeling uncomfortable, check it out.
And I obviously the movie has a love for records, and I really love the song "What About Us" by the Handsome Furs. So obviously you write what you know. So are records a big part of your life?
Records are, I would say, not as big as Adam. I wanted to give Adam this. I have some records. I have a record player. I don't have an amazing collection, but I love the idea of him having a collection that he didn't want other people's fingers on. So we got really lucky. If DJ Dan Wilcox, I think Sunday nights on KCRW is an old friend. So he was our music supervisor and really came in and saved our bacon in terms of we didn't know what songs we were going to have for the movie, I'd written in that stuff about the DJ Shadow Radiohead remix, and we knew we wanted, music that could be on vinyl, maybe not the most current music, because we wanted to kind of like harken back to like Margot and Adam's heyday, which was 7, 8, 9 years ago, and so we wanted something that felt like current but not too current. And Dan came in and did a great job helping us find those 5 songs.
That's so cool. And then, I mentioned this quickly, but where or how did you come up with the use of the whole cantaloupe versus rutabaga language come from? For listeners who haven't seen this film, Sasha and Tom, they use the word cantaloupe to each other if they decide that they should kill a couple. The couple doesn't deserve to live. And rutabaga if they're going to let them live. Is there anything that sparked that, or did you just randomly come up with that?
It was very random. I had it in this. I think I wrote it in the script and then figured I would change it to something else later, and never did. It felt like that kind of first instinct in this case felt like the best instinct. I love the idea of like cantaloupe and rutabaga being words that you really can't crowbar into a sentence without seeming odd. So it's not like Tom would ever say cantaloupe and they would accidentally murder someone. You know what I mean? They're very specific words. Maybe there was a little bit. Actually, I was talking with someone about the old Seinfeld episode. I think George has like a safe word, twinkle toes, when he wants to like get out of somewhere, and that always made me laugh. So there might have been a little Seinfeldian influence there.
Love it. And as a director and the writer of the film, do you have a favorite scene in the film, whether it was your favorite scene to actually film or your favorite now to watch in the finished product?
The whole it's tough because it's chopped up, so it's not really a scene per se. I would say 2 things. I love the whole sequence, especially because it was one of the first things I came up with in like writing the movie, of Adam and Margot when they are finally like, we have to go to bed, and they walk in and Tom and Sasha are sitting on the floor, and it's like, how do we get these people to leave, and what is the line that gets crossed? Is Adam going to like jerk Tom up by the arm? Like, it's like, how do you get people to leave when everything's very polite, and what that line is, and how to push it and make it as tense as possible, but it doesn't feel unrealistic. And then
it's like the real world when they say that line, be polite until it's time not to be polite.
That scene stands out for me too, because I remember as a viewer thinking like, oh my God, they're coming up with
out.
Yeah, they're like, oh, why don't we order pizza? Hey, are you guys good with like,
let's play a board game.
They keep
Tip
moving
off my
forward.
drink.
They are just, obviously they know what they're doing, but they are not getting the hint. And the funny thing is that anybody who's had people over knows what it's like when people overstay their welcome. Obviously it's not as extreme as this where they have ulterior motives, but like, and you don't want to have to say you need to go, but at some point you have to say that because they're just not.
Well, they don't want to be lame. So Matt and I usually see eye to eye, like on pretty much everything. But the one thing that we did not see eye to eye on is like, I really think Sasha Perry Matfeld looks like Jennifer Aniston. Like, I cannot be the only one that thinks that.
Well, you're definitely not the only one. I would, that did not occur to me. I wouldn't think so, but I have seen that on the internet.
Phew, okay.
People say that. So
I'm not alone.
I think it might be more specifically in this movie.
In this movie for sure.
I didn't see it.
I saw it. That's all my mind went to.
I'm sorry. We cut you off. You were saying there were 2 sequences that were your favorites. That was the first. What was the second?
Oh, I really liked the sequence, the slapping game sequence. And I think I liked that one because obviously I wrote it and I liked it, but I was worried that day. I was like, we've been shooting a lot in that living room. I was like, is this sequence going to play? It's such a long scene. Is this going to work? And the way it was shot and the way the actors played it and sold it just made it so fresh that I feel like it's almost like a little mini movie in itself. So that's one I'm really happy with.
Definitely worked.
It definitely worked. Yeah. So, the film ends where Tom and Sasha are still out there, and they pretty much make it known to Adam and Margot that they can go into their house whenever they want. And I'm wondering 2 questions on this. Number 1, would you ever consider writing a sequel? And number 2, do you think Adam and Margot made the wise decision to stay in that house? Because I'd be gone.
Well, I think it was Margot who made the decision.
Well,
right?
Margot did, but Adam obviously is going to support it. Well, but yeah, so would you ever consider doing a sequel? And do you think they made the right decision to stay there?
I'll answer them out of order. I think I think they are mostly safe. I mean, it feels like to me, if Tom and Sasha were going to do harm to them, they would have done harm to them already. I personally would be out of that house. I think there's a possibility that Margot, because she was, fibbed to before, and Adam kind of, bullied her into the move. There's a possibility she might change her mind. I think she puts up a strong front, but I wonder if maybe she's going to change her mind in a couple weeks. But see, Adam's doing she's teaching Adam a lesson, because he's doing the whole thing again. Hey, I just came home. I just put the house on the market. I just did this. And so she's kind of taking the reins. I mean, Tom and Sasha, there's a little bit of like these serial social sociopaths, like kind of like help Adam and Margot get their groove back. So the last scene isn't as much about Margot saying we're definitely staying in the house. The takeaway for me was more like, I'm standing up for myself. We're equal partners, and I'm playing guitar again. I'm probably going to start a band. I might even call Mr. Sexy Pants. That was kind of the vibe I wanted, and then I also wanted it to feel a little surreal, because Adam has seen things that Margot hasn't seen in terms of the murder. So he's probably going to be experiencing some pretty hardcore PTSD at this point. So I wanted to feel just a little dreamlike. And for the first question, hell yes. For me, I feel like I would love, to work. I didn't think, if you had asked me when we finished the movie, I'd be like, no, this is the end of the story. But it was so much fun to work with this crew and this cast and these actors. And obviously Tom and Sasha are still out there.
Alive and well.
Yeah, and Adam and Margot, I feel like there's a lot more to their story to tell, and the actors seem game for it. I also feel like Tom and Sasha, they're almost like, if like the talented Mr. Ripley was a couple, like you can kind of drop them into anywhere, like the south of France or like the ski slopes of Vale. They're always going to be like working angles and trying to like ingratiate themselves into this kind of upper echelon and causing trouble. So
yeah, I could see them taking on. I mean, it would maybe tougher to work all four of them, but I could definitely see any other plot with Tom and Sasha going in and working their magic into testing other couples and things like that.
Wreaking havoc.
Yes, wreaking havoc, and I want Teeny to get her moment. She got
stabbed.
Teeny needs to get one moment to shine.
When the film was all done and wrapped, was the first time did you have like a cast and crew screening? Because I know it's made for Shudder, but did you ever get to see it like on a 35 millimeter screen?
We did. So we were on a tight schedule because Shudder wanted to air it in September. So they had a few film festivals that they were like, well, if you can get it in here, that would be great. But we really just have the summer. So premiered at Overlook Film Festival, which was awesome. But that was just me that got to go to that. But so great. I was a little worried. I was like, oh, are the horror people, are they going to embrace this movie? And people seem to really dig it. It played at Fright Fest in the UK, which I didn't get a chance to go to. And then we had some screenings, or a big screening out here. We had a screening with just the cast, and then we had a screening with the cast and crew and a party at the Lemley Theater here in Hollywood. And that was like a few days before it aired on Shudder, and that was a blast.
Did everyone leave?
Wait, everyone leave in the middle of the movie?
Oh,
yeah,
I mean,
at the end, like, did everyone leave?
Oh, you mean bad joke. Not your best. The better question would have been, did anybody show up uninvited to the premiere?
You know what I'm saying? Can all be uncut gems.
There were no seats.
So we also, before we end, just to wrap things up, we wanted to ask you and I'm sure that you are, so I know the answer to this question, but are you working on any new projects right now that you can tell us about? And do you think you'll ever write another horror film?
Yes and yes. So pitching a TV show right now that is kind of a comedic detective show that takes place in let's just say the culinary world. And then I just sent a friend of mine, you have those writer friends who are the first people you send the scripts to when you're done to get their thoughts. I have a movie. It's a slasher movie. It's also a rom-com. And that's what I want to do next. I'm hoping people like it. I just finished draft 1, so I'm not quite sure where I am with it, but that's what I just finished up.
That sounds really cool.
Are you gonna steal the Queer as Folk title?
Home is where the ass is. It's gonna be the name.
Was that season 1?
It was season 1. I think that should be the title of the slasher rom-com. Home is where the ass is.
Matt.
Yeah, there was a Queer as Folk reboot, but I didn't catch it, and I don't think it's coming back.
I didn't.
I
We
watched
didn't catch.
it.
I
watched it on Peacock. I liked your version better.
Your version.
My version. I was basically just sharpening pencils and ordering.
That's okay. I like
your version.
It was a sharper version.
No, well, first off, we're very excited to follow your career. I think we both think you have a great career ahead of you, whether in horror or comedy. Like, again, we really enjoyed this movie, and we talk about new horror movies all the time, but there's only a few where we're like, we actually want to seek out the people involved in it because we enjoyed them so much. So we really did enjoy this film.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. If you watch the movie, your listeners, hit me up with a tweet, review it on Rotten Tomatoes, drop us some stars. But yeah, really appreciate that.
Of course.
And great questions as well.
Yeah, we have one final question for you, if you're okay. We asked this to everyone also that we interview on the podcast. What is one thing that you can tell us about your experience working on Who Invited Them that you've never told any other interviewer or publication or at a film festival?
Sasha.
That you've never told anybody? Just one thing about your entire experience that you've never told anybody.
I'll give this as an extra, but I've never talked about the coin flip Teeny Frank scene or the way that we nudged that little flash pop of them sneaking around the house from Act 1 to Act 3. So you're already getting some.
We already got some exclusives. Awesome, stuff. Thank you.
Oh God, I mean, this is obvious, but I certainly haven't talked about it. I was nervous as hell. Could not sleep, stomach ache, wanted to barf, driving to set that first day, very nervous.
Wow.
That's understandable.
I mean, it's your first film, so I get that. I mean, but that shows how much you care.
I know it's not like a newsflash sexy headline, but I haven't,
I've got a question. I don't know if we already asked this, but was it filmed in the Hollywood Hills?
It was filmed in the hills. There's actually, I'm giving you real behind the scenes. I might not have even said this. It was the hills of Burbank, actually.
Oh,
Glendale Hills.
Nice. Okay, so your backyard, kind of.
Yeah. So that's we never say Hollywood Hills or LA Hills just in case like something was going to happen. We're going to have to film in like the Portland Hills or something.
Yes.
But so there's some Hollywood Hills footage, but most of that is Burbank and Glendale.
It's awesome.
No, that's cool.
I love that.
Well, no, we love hearing these little tidbits. And it makes you a real person to show that you cared enough to be that nervous by it. But again, it turned out great. The performances are great. The writing, it was just, and it really stood out to us because it was very different.
It's a solid, perfect thriller.
Yeah, solid, perfect thriller. There it is.
All right. We're putting that's going to be the pull quote from this podcast that I post. So
solid, perfect thriller.
Listen, I'm not good with words.
Tim Murdoch.
I'm not a writer.
Happy Horror Time. No, well, again, thank you, Duncan, so much. We would love to stay in touch. We'll definitely be in touch. And thanks for spending the day with us.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, keep in touch. Great questions.
Okay, take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Happy Horror Time.
This podcast is hosted by Tim Murdoch and myself, Matt Emmert. It's co-produced by Jacob Randall.
We release new episodes every Monday, and we switch off between reviewing new horror films with spoilers and interviewing horror stars. So there's something for everyone.
You can listen to the podcast directly from our website. That's www.happyhorrortime.com, or from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you stream podcasts. And if you'd like to support us, please sign up to be a patron at www.patreon.com/happyhorrortime. Patrons get access to our monthly bonus episodes where we discuss past horror films according to a theme. They get to vote on those themes. They get our monthly newsletter, The Happy Horror Times, and autographed Happy Horror Time stickers.
If you haven't already, make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Happy Horror Time.
And since our movie reviews do contain spoilers, we always post the films we're going to review a few days in advance on our social pages. just in case you want to watch them beforehand and be in the know with us.
And finally, if you'd like to contact us directly, send an email to happyhorrortime@gmail.com. We especially love it when you tell us how sexy we are.
I'm Matt Emmert.
And I'm Tim Murdoch.
And we hope you have a happy horror time.